talking Noah Farkas. I knew he would forgive me for it. So, okay, good afternoon. I'm thrilled to see such a large group of people. I'm Erica Rudin-Luria. I'm the president of the Jewish Federation of Cleveland. It's great to be with all of you, and really an honor to be part of this critical conversation about something that is so important to our Jewish future. Today we gather at a historic moment. I think we've spent so much of the last year focused on surviving, but the only reason there is to survive is to create and build vibrant, thriving Jewish communities, and that's why we're here today. So, thank you to all of you again for being here and for the investments that you are already making in your Jewish future through supporting day schools. I know we have many funders, federations and foundations and others in this room right now. So today, we're all about elevating this topic to another level, to another stage. I'll say it's a particular privilege to be here because if you're from Cleveland, you know that in 1948, two great things happened. Okay, does anyone? State of Israel's one. No, well, okay, yes, that's a great point.
Community Foundation.
Well, no, what I was going to say is in 1948, the Jewish Federation of Cleveland became the first federation to fund and have a beneficiary agency that was a day school, the Hebrew Academy of Cleveland, which is the longest funded federation beneficiary day school in North America, I believe, at least in the United States, for sure. So right now, we have an incredible panel of experts and leaders today, each of whom is uniquely positioned to address the challenges and opportunities facing Jewish day schools. Before we dive into the discussion, I do want to take a moment to recognize the support of the Israel Ministry for Diaspora Affairs and Combating Anti-Semitism, which has made a significant investment in this space abroad during what is, of course, such a critical time in Israel's own national experience. We're grateful to Minister Chikli for his vision to strengthen the Jewish future through investing in our children's education, led by Director General Avi Cohen-Scally, who unfortunately is not able to be with us, but I'm told that we got very lucky with Itai Mixan joining us, and we'll introduce you more fully to him and the others in just a few moments. So the initiative of the Israeli government, in deep partnership with the Jewish Federations of North America, reflects a shared belief in the power of Jewish day school education. So we'll have the opportunity to hear from everyone. First, Dr. Wendy Rosov of Rosov Consulting is going to open our conversation. We love data in Cleveland, and many of her studies have influenced much of the work that we do, so I highly, highly recommend you get to know her pivotal research. And right now she's going to talk to us about her pivotal research on the ebb and flow of day school enrollment over the past 20 years. And I will hand it to you and let you walk through it.
Thank you. Great. Dina, is this this is the control panel here?
Yes,
Where are
and
you?
there's a clicker right next.
There's a clicker. Is there like a clicker? Like one of those hand clicker things? See? It's not here. I'm like, wait a second, it's really not here.
You manifested that.
I manifested, thank you. And then I have to figure out which direction is which is always a little challenging. Okay, great. Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for those kind words of introduction. I really appreciate it. And yes, the Cleveland folks are very serious about data, and many of you are very serious about data. And you're going to hear a lot of data right now from me, and then you're going to hear some really, I think, inspirational and important remarks from the panelists here. I want to thank, first of all, Dina Schaefer and Sarah Eisenman of Jewish Federations in North America for inviting me here today. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thanks to all of you for coming to the session. As my colleague Alex Thompson said earlier, you could go to a session on anti-Semitism, you could go to a session on all these sad things that are happening here. You chose to come to a session about Jewish day schools, and that's really uplifting and just very gratifying. So thank you for showing up. I am speaking on behalf of myself and my amazing team at Rosoff Consulting. I especially want to call out again Dr. Alex Thompson. Where are you, Alex?
Over here. Over there.
Co-principal and managing director of Rosoff Consulting, who I think is arguably one of the world's foremost experts in researching Jewish day schools. So thank you for all the work that you've done over many, many years in this space. Really appreciate it. Okay. We are going to talk about, in the next 10 minutes, the following 6 topics. Enrollment trends in U.S. Jewish day schools pre-2020, pre-COVID, because there was a little bit of a, you'll hear a little bit later, there's a little bit of a sort of a thing that happened in 2020, post-2020, and Jewish day schools. Factors shaping school choice. Signs of opportunity, this is sort of the COVID piece, and post-October 7th. A little bit about European precedents, which I think might be foreshadowing perhaps what might be happening or what we might be on the front end of here in the United States, hard to say. Financial considerations and a role for philanthropy, since all of you, many of you in this room are connected to philanthropy in one way, shape, or form or the other. And we will keep that is the last slide still there? Yep. Okay, well, we'll get there when we get there. Okay, in terms of enrollment trends, these are data that come from the most recent national census of Jewish day schools in the United States. Everyone will fondly recollect the Avichai Foundation. Are there any former professionals from the Avichai Foundation here in the room? There's one. Okay, great. Thank you so much. And thank you on behalf of, I think, the Jewish day school community for a very, very long time. Not you personally, but for the foundation. This is Dina Fuchs here, now of the Mika Philanthropies, supporting the Avichai Foundation obviously supported Jewish day schools for such a long time in the whole field. And conducted a census, I think it was every 5 years or so. And the last one was in 2018. So call here for a national census of U.S. Jewish day schools. We could definitely use some fresher data here in this space. And Prisma obviously does a lot of work in this space, but we could really use something that's more systematic and comprehensive. In 1998, enrollment in modern Orthodox Jewish day schools was approximately 27,000 students. In 2018, enrollment in modern Orthodox Jewish day schools was nearly 30,000 students, so a rise of about 9.2% over a 20-year period. In 1998, enrollment in non-Orthodox Jewish day schools was approximately 37,000 students, to be precise, 36,897. And in 2018, dropped down to 30,756, a drop of nearly 17%, 16.6%. Just to set the stage here. Today, in 2024, fewer than or less than 10% of school-age children from non-Orthodox homes attend a Jewish day school. We don't know actually what that number is because there hasn't been a census of U.S. Jewish day schools since 2018. But we do know as far as market penetration that less than 10% of eligible school-age children from non-Orthodox homes attend a Jewish day school. I do want to say that that's all I want to say about that. Thank you. Okay, the next thing I want to talk a little bit about is drivers of school choice. And those of you who are part of the Aleph Bet, Project Aleph Bet cohort, you heard a little bit about this earlier from my colleague Alex. But this slide actually presents drivers of school choice that is based on research in general education, not in Jewish education, but in general education, looking at when parents are making a choice between public and private education for their kids. So number one driver of school choice is academic reputation. And we certainly know that over the last 50 years, Jewish families have been able to afford to purchase homes in neighborhoods with access to public schools with relatively very strong academic reputations. Those things are changing today, just as we speak. For those of you who went to a session earlier on economic vulnerability in the Jewish community, we know that that notion that Jewish families can move to wealthy neighborhoods with good school districts is not necessarily the case anymore. Number two is that the values that are promoted are very important to parents, and Jewish parents have historically been strongly attracted to diversity, the diversity that public schools promise. Jewish parents have not wanted to ghettoize their children by sending them to schools where everyone is Jewish or necessarily everyone thinks the same way that they do. Discipline and safety. Historically, public schools have been safe places for children, even in some regions of the United States, even if in some regions of the United States where gun violence has been a concern. Historically, public schools have been pretty safe places. And cost, obviously, public schools are free. And Jewish day schools are not. And convenience also is a huge factor in terms of location, right? Parents want to be able to send their kids to school in places that are relatively close to where they live. Signs of opportunity, the COVID-19 pandemic. These data come from Prisma, so thank you to Paul and his colleagues. These data points may foreshadow a shift. I feel like I'm standing behind this lectern, and I'm not sure. Maybe I should stand here. Is that better? Yeah, I think is that okay if I do that? These data points may foreshadow a profound shift in the behaviors of American Jews, driven by a decline in confidence in both public and secular private schools on the one hand, and a search for Jewish community on the other. According to the work done by Prisma in a survey of schools, of their schools in December of 2022, so that's roughly 2 years into the pandemic, or about 18 months into the pandemic, of 135 schools out of the network that reported, so it's about 40% of the schools represented here, 54% experienced increased enrollment from 2020 to 2022. 11% had stable enrollment and 34% had declining enrollment. Prisma ran some of the numbers and estimated that roughly, if you sort of shake everything out, between the 2019-2020 school year and the 2020-21 school year, there was roughly a 2% increase in enrollment in Jewish day schools, and the following year, there was an additional 3% bump. Another potential sign of opportunity, for those of you who have heard JFNA, the Jewish Federations of North America, the work that they've been doing in terms of these pulse surveys, we know that parents who responded to these pulse surveys, 39% indicated that in some way, shape, or form, when they took the survey, they were reconsidering school or summer programs for their children. And Prisma in 2024, in the second quarter of 2024, again, a survey of their schools to which about 35% responded, 103 schools represented here. 60% of those schools that responded to their school survey indicated or reported that they had new students enrolled or were projected to enroll for the 2024-2025 school year as a result of the change in climate post-October 7th. So these may be some signs of opportunity. I want to talk a little bit about precedents in Europe. I'm going to find my sheet here. Here we go. Great. So this is a little bit of looking at roughly a sort of a 30-year history here, and then a little bit in France, it's a little closer to the sort of 20, 25-year trajectory. In the United Kingdom, in the UK in 1990, fewer than or less than 25% of eligible families were enrolled in Jewish day schools. Today, more than 40% are enrolled. To what has this massive change been attributed, this 15% increase over this period of time? One was that what are called grammar schools in the UK, which are essentially selective public schools, think magnet schools here, charter schools, things of that nature, basically closed. And the academic quality of the Jewish day schools went up. So two things happened to account for this 15% change over time. And in France, we see, again, in 1996, less than 16% of eligible Jewish kids were enrolled in day schools, and today more than 40% are enrolled. Again, the factors coming together here, decline in the quality of public education and rising fears, frankly not just fears, but experiences of anti-Semitism. So some interesting European precedents. The last thing I want to talk about here is financial considerations. I got 2 minutes and I'm on my last slide, so it's fantastic. Yay me. I just want you to see here, and many of you in the room know this, but maybe you haven't seen it quite this way. The average tuition in US Jewish day schools today is $35,000 a year. That's average. In non-Orthodox schools and high schools and schools in major urban centers, it can climb to $40,000 and $60,000 and above. How many of you work and live in communities or parts of communities where day school tuition is $40,000? More than 40? More than 50? Okay, there it is right there. It is estimated that barely half of all families enrolled in Jewish day schools pay full tuition, as compared to 75% of families that are enrolled in other forms of independent and private school settings pay full tuition. This is a lot of ground to make up, and really, really important for everyone in this room to hear. I think I'm done. I did have another slide about philanthropy and some bright spots on the horizon, but you'll just have to wait and hear about it from the panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you so.
And I'm really glad I stepped in front of the dais after all that time spent. Okay, anybody using this?
I think are we back on? Great. Thank you so much, Wendy.
Do you want me to just leave that up there as a pain point, or do you want to turn it off? Okay. Okay, no problem.
So, in all kidding aside, like, if dollars are the only reason why more kids aren't in our day schools, then I kind of feel like in this room we should be able to figure that out. Like, really seriously. And I think one of the things that you're going to hear from our panelists today is that now is the time for us to level up and to, frankly, like, think more of ourselves and our schools and to invest deeper. And so I'm not going to steal their thunder, but I want to quickly introduce our distinguished panelists. Itai Nixon, which, okay.
No, you definitely don't want to be Nixon around here.
Is the director for the Diaspora Division for the Israel Ministry of Diaspora Affairs and Combating Anti-Semitism. They're always very difficult to get through that. Itai will share his thoughts on why Jewish day school enrollment matters to the Israeli government and what their investment signifies for Jewish children and families across North America. Helen Zalek is the founder of the Zalek Foundation, headquartered in Atlanta. Under Helen's leadership, Atlanta is leading the way with several new initiatives aimed at improving day school excellence, increasing enrollment, attracting and retaining Jewish communal professional talent, and elevating the status of Jewish professionals through the foundation's unique investments. And Paul Bernstein is the founding CEO of Prisma Center for Jewish Day Schools. Prisma is the network for Jewish day schools and yeshivas across North America. Paul brings a field-wide perspective on what works to drive excellence, enrollment growth, affordability, and ultimately to support our communities in ensuring educational success and thriving Jewish day schools. Thank you all for being here today. Helen, I think we're going to start with you. So in Atlanta, your foundation has invested in two major initiatives, one at the Weber School and one that makes day school accessible to the children of Jewish professionals. Tell us about these and what inspired you and the foundation to do this, and what is it that you hope to see in terms of outcomes?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here. To invest and to have Jewish leaders tomorrow, we have to have and we must invest in our children today. That's the basic premise that we're working with. And you're right, if only it was about dollars, we would all solve the problem. However, it is about dollars, but it's also greatly about excellence. Mm-hmm. Excellence doesn't necessarily have to cost a fortune. Let me tell you a story. A few years ago, my husband and I went to Yerucham in Israel. Have you guys ever been there? It's like the Beersheba 20 years ago. You're in the desert. There is nothing there. What made that trip particularly memorable was we walked into a school, and in the back, there was a garage. And in the garage was a robotics lab, okay? In this robotics, okay, I'm gonna be honest, it was a mess, okay? It was a disaster. I mean, it really was. There were parts everywhere, there were screens, there were things that I know nothing about, but my husband could not stop looking and touching at all the pieces and asking a million questions of the director of the lab. And what he shared with us was that these kids in Yerucham were competing in national and international competitions and placing in the top 5 out of a lab in the garage in the Yerucham in a desert. We were blown away by the ingenuity of the Israeli people. You don't have to have millions and millions of dollars to be creative and to be giving your kids a skill. So when we came home back to Atlanta, the first thing that we went to was our local community high school, and we looked around and we spoke with the head of school and we said, hey, what would make your school stand out? What would give it a competitive advantage? If you could add anything, what would it be? By the way, there is this place in Yerucham we went and visited. What do you think about a robotics lab or a STEM lab? Started a conversation. He was blown away. Flew to LA, look at a Milken lab. There was something similar. Lo and behold, with investment, sure, but very creatively, strategically placed, our enrollment numbers have grown over 20% in just a couple of years. And when our kids walk around and you ask them, why did you pick the Weber School? Many of them will say, it is because of the Daniel Zalek Academy, it is because of the lab, because no one else in Atlanta is offering this unique program. Forget a Jewish school, no school. So that's the thing. If we're going to invest in our Jewish schools, we have to remember that first and foremost, they are a school. It is an academic institution, and we need it to be of excellence because we are the people of the book, and therefore, we must teach our children well. And if we want them to be Jewish leaders, we have to teach them in a Jewish setting, imbuing Jewish values in the middle of their STEM lab projects, which is what they do in the school. So that's our first project. Investing in excellence, not novel, but creative. The second initiative that we did at the Atlanta community that we've done as part of a major undertaking is actually a little bit more novel and creative, and we're thrilled that it is being promoted here today with the other wonderful programs of the Aleph Bet Initiative, and that is the Jewish Community Professionals Children's Fund. Mouthful, sure. What is it? It is a 50% discount on tuition to any child who enrolls in a Jewish day school or high school whose parent is a full-time Jewish professional. That doesn't just mean teacher. It could be a rabbi. It could be an accountant. It could be someone HR, CEO. Doesn't matter. If you work in the Jewish community, you will be entitled just by birth, if you will, to have this benefit and a privilege. Now, we did not set out to reward Jewish professionals. We kind of happened into that demographic, if you will. We wanted to help on the affordability side, right? We heard from many people for many years. You all know it's really hard to afford school. We just heard $35,000 average tuition. However, the biggest challenge in affordability is how do you increase enrollment without penalizing the existing students, right? How do you give a new incoming student 50% reduction, but then your current families are sitting around saying, wait a minute, we have been loyal consumers, why are you not giving us the same? So when we thought about which audience, which demographic could we invest in, reward, who is currently already enrolled, Lord and behold, the Jewish professionals were the first ones, and we thought if that is a benefit to the existing students, Dayenu, thank God, we're happy to support them, they're grossly underpaid. When we did a little bit more research, we learned that many of the schools were already giving some professionals some discounts. It was very inconsistent, 10%, 15%, 20%. So we standardized it, added to it, made it 50%, and here is the kicker. We said to the schools, whatever money you're freeing up that you're no longer allocating because we are paying for it, we want you to reinvest that money back into excellence of your school. We're not going to tell you what that means, but you will tell me in a report what you want it to be. So that it's all upfront and agreed upon, whether it's getting a counselor, expanding music programs, getting a therapist, offering higher tuition for your teachers. It is not our place to dictate what that will go to, but it's not going to go to a broken roof. Okay. And the result of this program has been phenomenal on many aspects. Number one, our Jewish professionals are thrilled. They feel valued, they feel seen. But we've had a bunch of unintended and positive consequences. First of all, the direct enrollment numbers are up, but so are the indirect enrollment numbers. What does that mean? Well, Jewish professionals are influencers. They're the rabbis, they're the counselors that you see and you talk to. Or when you say, where do you send your kids to school? And they tell you, oh, I send them to a public school. Well, that kind of gives us permission to do the same. But when everyone that you talk to tells you, oh, I send to this school, this school, this school, it really does have a very positive benefit to the bottom line of the enrollment numbers. In addition, we learned from our heads of schools and other organizations that the retention and recruitment numbers have been phenomenal. It has helped tremendously drive up the level of talent. It has brought men and women back into the field, and it has prevented people from leaving the Jewish professional world altogether so that they could receive this benefit. So it has been very creative, very clever, and very easily replicable in other markets.
That's so great. Thank you so much. And I'm sure we're going to have a ton of questions afterwards also. Okay, Itai.
Yes.
So why does the Israeli government care about Jewish day school in North America? And tell us about this partnership from your view.
Perfect. First of all, nice to be here. Nice to meet you all. I'm going to apologize on behalf of our Director General, who at the last moment couldn't come to this incredible gathering, and has asked me to step in his shoes, which is a challenge, and I hope I live up to his expectations and yours. So why is the Israeli government in this field at all? I think the most basic answer is that the future of Israel and the future of Jewish diaspora is intertwined. I mean, I don't think we can separate those two things. And I think our ministry, and I think in general the Israeli government, believes that we need a strong Jewish diaspora. And we know that a strong Jewish diaspora needs to have, as a cornerstone, good Jewish education. And we know through all the results and all the data and everything that we've seen that the best way of achieving that is having good Jewish day schools and having as many Jewish kids and families enrolled in those schools. So I think that's the foundation of why we're here. And when we see the challenges that exist out there, we understand that from the government's perspective, we can't come, across the ocean and say, you need to do this and this and this and this. I mean, first of all, we don't know. Second of all, I don't think that'll be well received. Through investing in a partnership like Project Aleph Bet and some other things that we do around the world, we know that we can find the organizations, institutions, the people who see this as the main issue, who can come up with the problems they think will be the best in their locations. And we can try and create a project that brings everybody together to try and solve the problems in different places, learn from those cases and hopefully replicate them and spread them within the US and hopefully throughout the world. I mean, the advantage that we have as a ministry is that we are able to see, beyond North America. So hopefully, I mean, this is a new project that we're just starting. And hopefully we'll be learning a lot from this. And hopefully we'll be saying, the amazing things that are being done in Atlanta, maybe we can take that and replicate it in, I don't know, Australia or France or the UK, wherever there's an issue. So we're very excited about that. And I think in general, it's an incredible opportunity for us. And I just like to add, I mean, all our hearts are back in Israel now. We're here, we're meeting, we're having these incredible meetings. We're all wearing these gorgeous, bands because our hearts are back home. But we still see value in investing in Jewish education abroad because we know that we need that. We need that for our future. We need that for you guys to be there, when we need you. And so that's why we're involved. That's why we believe in Jewish education. And that's why I think we'll be there for the long run, I mean, as far as we're concerned.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for all of your support from all of us. Okay, so Paul, from the network balcony view, how do you see this particular moment of time that we're in terms of advancing the investment in day school education? And what is the opportunity? What do you see on the horizon that maybe some of us, maybe we're not even aware of yet?
Thank you, and thank you. Particularly want to echo your thanks to the ministry that the state of Israel, before the war, during the war, recognizes the centrality of Jewish education, and in particular Jewish day schools, is incredibly important, and was echoed in the comments that Julie Platt gave this morning, that at a time when we could just be talking about the incredible needs and our need to support Israel, and to be talking about the importance of anti-Semitism, that investing in Jewish life in order that we emerge from this crisis a stronger community, and as Helen said, we're really investing in the next generation. That's very central to us. And I think what we recognized, as Julie said this morning, is that increasing enrollment in day schools, ensuring the success of all of our schools, no matter what their outlook, is really central to it. There's a few things in terms of where we're at and why now. The first, which was reflected in what Wendy was sharing, is that the state of our schools is strong. Let me sort of add a couple of sort of data points to that. One is bringing what Wendy was talking about in enrollment to this school year. We are seeing a further increase in enrollment on top of what Wendy described of 1.3% across the Prisma network of schools, which are all of the schools of any denomination outside of the Haredi and Hasidic worlds. So a further reinforcement of that. 60% of schools telling us that they are seeing enrollment because of the current climate. And if I may share one specific story, and this is fresh today. In Toronto today, the community has announced that 3 schools have worked together, and each of those 3 schools is going to open an additional kindergarten classroom next year. So this isn't just about filling the classes we have. We've reached the point in many places, in many schools, where we actually have to increase the capacity. And what's special about that is, firstly, it's built on the data we've been learning for a few years. We know kindergarten enrollment has been going up in the field, and it's something Toronto has seen in previous years. Secondly, that the community is working together. So the Federation has not just initiated a conversation, but really helped the schools to have the conversation. The 3 schools are all able to do it side by side and overcome any potential competitive issues that we often hear is the barrier to things really happening in a community. And together they've created that capacity. And that is a message I think that's so important for all the work we are doing, that we actually move forward as communities. It's one of the reasons why we're so glad to be able to be having this conversation at the Federation General Assembly, because it is our partnership that matters so much. The strength, the other thing I wanted to share, which sort of frames the sort of why we think it works, or 2 things around that. One, if it wasn't for the fact we were all going to be agitated to get through security to get into the plenary after this, what I would be saying to you is stay in the room when this session finishes, because there are so many wonderful people doing a number of different initiatives in this room, and I would love people to be able to have more conversations in all the different ways. So the conversations are there to be had going
They
forward.
can stand in the security line.
Yes, anyone who's involved in a project and wants to share your success, no twos in the room, just walk up and down the line while you're there. That's a great idea. Thank you, Erica. But and the other piece of it is with the increase of enrollment that happened in 2020 directly because of COVID, that we interpreted as people were desperate to be in person, and most of the Jewish day schools were able to do a far better job than the general education sector, particularly public, but to a degree private, were open in person and delivering a good product despite all the barriers. Towards the end of that school year, we expected many of those families to say, thank you very much, my school's reopening, I'm going back. So we actually ran a study, it was run on our behalf by Rosov Consulting, to interview those families. And actually, basically what they described was many of those families had considered day school before, had decided not to come for all of the reasons we're familiar with. It's not good enough. It's too Jewish. It's too homogenous. It's too expensive. All the barriers we're very familiar with. By the end of that year, they had basically fallen in love and realized the schools actually are strong, and that it was a place where their kids were able to feel comfortable. And 3 years later, 2/3 of those families were still there. It also added to what Wendy said about the factors driving school choice, which I do think apply very much to us, and appreciate you sharing that, particularly with excellence at the top of that list. But the things it added to is, one of the things that the family said was that relationships were really important, and as connected to that is community is really important. Community is often something that when you do studies, people don't actually verbalize, because it's one of those things that I think is more implicit than an explicit thing we're looking for. But those are the things that our schools are able to provide, so we're able to really seize this opportunity to continue to grow and increase enrollment. And I will just very quickly, and happy to go deeper, the way we go about that is not simply to say, for example, you cut the price. Comes back to that point, it isn't just a function of money, but we see it as there is a virtuous cycle of growth, that if you want to increase enrollment, you need to invest and demonstrate excellence, because it's also I forget the word you use, Wendy, but there's a perception of excellence that is really important out there in the community. That in order to have excellence, you need to invest in talent, because the greatest influence on a child's success is the teacher in front of them. The greatest influence on the school success is the leadership of the school, professional and lay. And of course, you have to invest in affordability. The cost factor, as Wendy described, is important. So as we think about those areas, we have a real opportunity to invest in each of those 4 things: to grow enrollment, to drive excellence, to invest in talent, to address affordability. And there are many areas that we think we can do in communities over the next few years that really will bring even greater success.
Thank you. So one of the themes from each of you is that no one is working on an island. Helen is collaborating with school. She's also, frankly, bringing in partners from Israel to inspire. Each of you talked about different partnership and collaboration. I want to recognize from Cleveland in the room, we have head of school of Gross Schechter Day School, Ginny Galili. We have the incoming chair of the Fuchs Mizrahi School, Danielle Wild. And I don't know if our chief development officer is still sitting there or not, but they are all key. We have a $90 million proposal in front of the Mandel Foundation that they're going to vote on later in November to transform our day schools in Cleveland. We'll have another matching $90 million that we're in the process of raising. So it'll mean $180 of new investments.
180 million.
180 million, thank you. Wow.
Just put an M
so
after
bad. Wow. Thank you. 100 million in endowment dollars and 80 million in capital investments, because it's time to level up. But that's actually only possible because of all of the partnership and years of working together, which evolved us to a place where we both have the foundation partner as well as other philanthropists in the community that are recognizing that they too can make a difference in our day schools. And so I guess I'll throw a question out, I guess to all of you. For the communities in this room and community leadership in this room, what do you recommend they focus on? Like, what are the first steps so that they can begin to conceive of, Helen, what you're doing in Atlanta, or take advantage of the wealth of knowledge and partnership from the Israeli government? Maybe we'll go to Helen first, and then after that, then we'll probably open it up for a Q&A. And Wendy, I want to give you the opportunity to jump in if you have thoughts and ideas on this.
I'll
too.
jump in if I
Okay.
have thoughts and ideas.
Can't do it alone, guys. We all really need each other, and we need strong leaders across the board. So I would say build relationships. It always starts and ends there. Get to know your heads of school. Get to know your heads of CEOs, of Jewish organizations. Get to know your philanthropists. Get to know your major donors. Like really, really take the time to understand what moves them, what drives them, identify those opportunities, and see where you can coalesce around the vision. We, in Atlanta and nationally, lost a great visionary, Bernie Marcus, just last week. And it has been a tremendous loss. And when we look at the kind of legacy that one person can create, the impact that we can make, he didn't do it alone either. He did it with an entire team of people. So I urge every single person here to follow suit, to develop relationships, to build, to invest, and to really dig in, because, Hineni, here we are. If not us, who?
Well, I'll start off by saying that it'll be very presumptuous of me to tell the Jewish communities in North America what I think they should do. But I'll say that the first step that, in my point of view, would be important was reach out to different places. In our case, it would be some organization like United, that knows the issues around the world, and tell them about the issues that you're dealing with. There's a good chance that there's a different place that's dealt with this kind of issue in the past, or something similar, and they could probably at least start to steer you in the right direction and try and find solutions to those issues.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, very much in the same vein, let me focus on sort of the process of doing, because the first investment is not the last investment. That some of the best successes have come after many years of trying a number of different things and seeing what works and being brave enough to fail. And the way I would build that if I were in an individual community is to get the leaders around the table, the professional and the lay leaders. We have a number of very talented heads of school in this room who do incredible work in their schools and an active role in their communities' conversations on how we can improve. And in particular, really thinking about how schools can work together and overcome that fear that they have, particularly coming from a competitive environment.
I'll chime in. I would say, I think we know from the general research literature, which is always the place I'm going to start from, that quality in education in general, and certainly in our Jewish day schools, is typically associated with sort of 5 things. Access for diverse learners, which more and more of our kids are today, for sure. Professional development for educators, leadership development, and overall sustainability for the headship. Investment in technology. You mentioned some of the stuff that you guys have been doing in Atlanta. These this is who the kids are today. This is our world, and it's not going anywhere. And integration of learning theories, and so these components, these 5 components. I mean, if you're looking for sort of concrete investments that typically are associated with improved quality in education more generally, and certainly for our Jewish day schools, are also places to be thinking about as far as concrete spaces and places to be investing.
Great, thank you. So you have a wealth of experience up here. I'd love to open the floor for questions. Okay, please say your name and the community you're from. And I saw Michael over here, and I saw hands over there, and right over there also. So we'll.
There's a mic
Coming your way, Michael.
Okay.
Michael Boner from Boston. I have a question for Wendy. I've always assumed
You're
that...
going to ask the hardest question.
No, I've always assumed that Jewish values has been an important driver for enrollment in day schools. And I think it's even more important now. When you had your slide up, and it was the number 1 on the list, I was assuming that was supported my view. But then what you said about it was a little more ambiguous, and I just wanted
Well, I was
to...
talking about drivers of school choice for parents for general education and independent school education. I wasn't talking about Jewish education. So values is that we have tons of friends, I'll just speak personally, we have tons of friends who are very, very Jewishly engaged and very, very Jewishly involved, and their core values, they have commitments to public education, right, to public school education. That is something that they value. That's something that was imparted to them perhaps by their parents or not. Some of them are Jewish day school graduates themselves, but they are very, very devoted to and are in line with and in sync with values of, public education, and that's really important to them. And so
see some erosion of that at this point.
We can't underestimate that. I mean, Jewish day school is never going to be for every Jewish family, right? So the question is, what are the incremental moves that we can make to increase enrollment and to make, Jewish education and Jewish day school education in particular more attractive, more affordable, more accessible, and sort of all those things, and higher quality, and the quality has improved for sure. So that was the values piece. I'm not arguing
Paul,
with
do you want
that.
to jump in?
Can I add to that? I mean, I think if the way people perceived school choice and what they were trying to achieve was based around which college is my kid going to get into when the kid is 4 years old, then the elevation of some of these issues, including values, I think is something we're seeing that actually suggests people are now more explicitly seeing a wider set of things that really matter in making their choices. And I would include values in the sense that we might talk about it. I do think that there is in this very complicated world that we're living in, and with the fears that any parent might reasonably have for what their kids are growing up to, with everything from social media to our divisive politics, that actually a place that offers you a values-driven education is something that people are looking for. And of course, something that through the lens we bring is something that day schools really can offer, and therefore I think we can, whilst it may be different from the values that Wendy was referring to in that particular research, is actually something that I think we can, rather than be scared about being Jewish and being out there, we can actually present as a positive in the school choice
Thank you.
decision.
We'll hand it over there. I know anecdotally we hear about families that say, I thought X was important. Here, right over there.
Dina behind
Dina, right behind you. There's someone. And then I promise we'll move over there. They'll say, I want my child to be psychologically healthy. And this is a healthy environment for them. And I feel like we hear that more and more and more. Please, your name and community.
Cindy Golub, New York. So some of the examples you use, like in Canada, the government helps, basically school is almost free. In the UK, the school I went to this year was paid for entirely by the Rothschild family. we're saying that we should get over the problem. We should be able to get over the problem if it's only financial. I think the problem is so much deeper financially, because I think that there are so many people out there that would take advantage of Jewish day school, but they don't even the 50% tuition
Totally.
break is not enough, or even that there's so much head in demand. I know 20 years ago there was a man in Chicago that was saying if everyone just left 5% in their will to Jewish day schools, the problem would go away. We just have never seemed to be able to really make a huge dent in day school tuition to be able to allow all the other people who don't even come to the table to go. What is the solution?
So Toronto, actually, its day school education isn't free. They have an amazing program, though, and they have an endowment that is a community endowment around affordability. And that has been very successful at increasing the size. And Adam Minsky or Daniel Held or anyone around from the Toronto Federation, I highly recommend you
So it's
talk
like
to.
it's a $200 million.
200 million. I'm getting numbers really off.
I was going to there's an element of this. When people often talk about endowments and sort of how small our endowments are, to which my usual answer is Harvard didn't build its endowment overnight.
Right.
We're investing for the long term, and I very much take it as a sort of glass half full question. I mean, thinking about Cindy as you're asking that question, so Cindy and her family and many others have done incredible work in New York building this. I happen to know the school very well. My kids went to the school that Cindy is very closely associated with. And that is a school that's worked incredibly hard, hasn't yet solved the problem in the sense that Cindy's meaning in that it's still very expensive, but does everything it can for more than 50% of the families in the school. And even in that environment, it is an expensive school, is now one of those schools that is really bursting at the seams because I can say this as a parent. It fundamentally comes from the fact they invested in leadership, that leadership then invested in excellence, and that for a family in the school, that we saw the quality of that. And of course, I may be biased because I kind of like day schools, but we were willing to pay for it. So yes, the problem that you are describing is a huge one and one we will battle with for decades. And that examples like Toronto and what Erica, and I want to say huge credit to Erica as a leader in the community for really making that happen. It just doesn't happen by itself. Those big investments can happen in our communities, but they happen on the back of all of these things that improve the quality and start to bring kids in other places in much smaller ways.
Okay. Over here.
Hi, my name is Aviva Wiles. I'm head of school of Gesher Jewish Day School right outside in Northern Virginia, just across the bridge. I want to ask about something I heard in the last session around where Jewish families are right now, and kind of also prompt all of you to think about it. If Jewish families are living outside of metro centers, large population centers, how are we investing in Jewish communities that might not be at the center of cities, like Gesher, but there are other schools I'm sure in the room as well, to invest where some small Jewish day schools, we can't let those schools go away if that's where Jewish families are going. So how are you thinking about investing in day schools where Jewish families might be moving to?
Sure. I'll take it. I mean, one of the most fundamental questions for smaller communities is that the community might not exist if the day school stops existing. So the importance of day school to every community, and in particular in smaller environments. And for us, it's a really important priority for us to be able to support either smaller communities or, as in Aviva's case, a school that is on the next to a sort of much larger environment as you have in Virginia. It is critical, and we've seen some very substantial investments. And again, the success comes from the same factors. After we finish tomorrow, I'm going to Memphis to visit the community there, and there are a number of day schools in that community. One of the things that I'm really looking forward to learning is how the Federation and the schools work together, how the Federation has prioritized for a long time the importance of those schools in their community, and they haven't solved everything. Part of the reason that I'm going there and we're having there is to have conversations about what might we do for enrollment, what could we do on endowments, what could we do to really raise the bar on both educator and leadership talent. There are a number of initiatives that we may be talking about, but it comes from the recognition that the success of their schools is essential to the success of the communities. and that we have to be very innovative. And one of the things we do in Prisma is we bring the heads of smaller schools and smaller communities together to really help each other. I forget, I said it earlier on, that the shared learning is the key learning in order that they can really help build their schools and grow. And we've seen growth in many of those schools in the last few years.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to both of these questions in terms of how do we make an impact. And I think it's to elevate this conversation, right? Look at the success that you're having as the head of the Federation in Cleveland. It's amazing. I would wish and want and pray that every CEO of every federation makes the same kind of an effort that you have done in your community. This conversation has had its day, 20 years ago, everybody was talking about it, and for the last 20 years, I haven't heard it. So let's put it back at the top of our agenda. We've sort of lost it for a little while. So I'm thrilled that the ministry is investing in our initiatives, not because of our initiatives, but because this topic does go to the heart of our Jewish identity, of our Jewish peoplehood, and of the leaders that we're trying to create. So let's bring it back. Let's elevate it.
And can I just want to add, though, that the partnership that we're talking about right now, though, the partnership between federations and day schools isn't only around day school education. I think it's actually really, really important. The building of a real relationship that, like Helen was talking about earlier, our day schools are everywhere in our community. They're showing up everywhere. So yes, like they're communities unto themselves, but they're also very much part of our broader community. By the way, from our community school that's not Orthodox to our ultra-Orthodox school, they all show up everywhere with each other, together. And I think that that's another critical piece of it, because then it's really, really clear to the other folks at Federation how important those schools are to our entire community. So we had someone over here, please, and I'm going to keep an eye on the watch. Is
this on?
Yes, name and community,
Hi,
please.
Leba Fagan, Long Island. I have two questions. I hope that's okay. And if we don't have time for two, you can choose which one to answer. The first question is, can you talk a little bit about government funding and the success that certain states, I know like Florida, Ohio, have seen with government vouchers, and how to replicate that model in other states? And the second question, if there's time, would be, you talked a little bit about talent and retaining teachers and paying teachers and compensating them to get that talent. It is a huge problem, equal to, I would say almost equal to the financial burdens that we're faced with. Tuition is also just the amount of people going into the field of Jewish education is decreasing. And so I think it's a fabulous model of the 50%, but at the end of the day, if someone has 2, 3, 4 kids, even at 50% tuition on a teacher's salary, they're pretty much left with nothing at the end of the day. So my second question would be, how do we get more talent and retain them?
Okay. Anyone want to jump in? Paul, do you have a sense of the different states? I can speak some to Ohio, but please.
Not to go state by state, because there's a lot of diversity, but I actually want to come at it from a number of things. One is the value of government funding to the future of our schools is incredible. To the question of can we actually solve this, government funding is fundamental. I grew up in the UK. We did not have the same separation of church and state, so I understand the differences of perspective. But I think rather than just focus on the vouchers question, which is doing some incredible things in certain places and works in certain places, states where that may not work have really focused on the things where there is a large consensus, whether it is security or technology or special needs or nutrition. Those are things that actually have broad support across the community. I've been talking with a number of people in different states who don't feel they can go for the if you like, the far end of what's currently possible as exists in Ohio and Florida and a number of others. But we can make progress in this area, and it is an essential contribution because however much philanthropy people are generous enough to give, it isn't the full solution. You are so right to focus on teachers, and there is not a silver bullet that we could say, right, if we only did this, the supply of teachers and the retention of our teachers would be solved. over the last couple of years, convened a wonderful group of field leaders to discuss the educator pipeline from the pre-career to the later career, because it's all stages that matter. That group produced what we call our sort of playbook of ideas. It was something we produced in partnership with the Jewish Education Innovation Challenge. Produced a playbook of 36 things that can be implemented that will have a real impact. And it's everything from a school level. So for example, we're talking a lot about fellowships. So Fuchs Mizrahi, for example, has a fellowship trying to bring actually Clevelanders back to Cleveland from college to experience the inside of the school. The head of school is very passionate in promoting this. And I was in Boston, the Maimonides School there is doing a very similar thing, that actually trying to attract young people who are in college to think about education as a career by giving them an experience in our schools. And there are many examples of that we can build both at the school level and then ultimately in addressing things like universal benefits, which might be something we want to address on more of a community or systems level. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of really strong ideas that we can implement that will have an impact on our educator pipeline and really drive things forward. And you're both right about how important it is today. Plus, as members of my team keep reminding me, if we're successful and we drive enrollment up even further, guess what? We need even more teachers than we have now.
Okay, so I want to give each panelist a chance for any final few words that they'd like to say that if something hasn't been said already. And so in any order.
I'll go first. I just want to say that I'm personally very gratified to see all of you here today. I am the proud graduate of Jewish Day School Education in Philadelphia, kindergarten through 12th grade. Two of my fellow classmates are sitting in this room, and I want to point out Holly Cohen. Holly, do you want to stand up and say what you do now in your professional?
I'm the CEO of Tamim Academy, and we are extremely excited to be part of the Project Alphabet.
Okay, there, day school grad. And Gail, come on, you can't avoid me. You did in high school, but you can't avoid me now. Because I'm up here and I have the mic.
I'm the immediate past chair of the Philadelphia Federation, and I'm also vice chair of Charisma.
All right. Anyway, that's all I want to say is I'm the proud graduate of 12 years of Jewish Day School Education. As a child of divorce and single mother during a very hard period, Jewish Federation of Philadelphia and other Jewish philanthropy stepped up and basically scholarshiped me all the way through my 12 years of Jewish Day School Education. So thank you. And here I am serving you as a result.
Helen?
Well, I'm not a graduate of day school education,
That's okay.
unfortunately.
That's okay.
But I am also a lucky beneficiary recipient of the Jewish Federation of Nashville and all the services. And I have a fellow friend and somebody that actually who hosted my whole family to our very first Passover and was our sponsor family when my family immigrated from the Soviet Union, Naomi, who's currently the CEO of
The Ty Letter Jewish Foundation.
So it's incredible that Naomi's here, really taking me back to my roots. I guess what I'd like to share, having come from the former Soviet Union and now being able to sit on the stage with you guys today, is that some problems really seem untenable. Certainly when I was 11 and I did not speak a word of English, the idea that I would be sitting here on the stage did not even cross my mind.
Okay, she wins.
But nonetheless, hard work, perseverance, relationships, Jewish values have carried me all the way on the wings of all the philanthropists and donors and the organizations that y'all have built before me. So thank you for that. And don't let that stop us from trying.
First of all, in a way, I am a graduate of Jewish Day Schools. Yes, it's free, not necessarily as good as schools here, but anyways, I just have two things to say. First of all, you have books on your table that have been written by professionals who came to visit Israel during the last year. And they have, I believe at least, they have a lot of interesting insights there, both in terms of education and in terms of values and the emotions that they went through. And the second thing, I'll just repeat what Helen said before. I think the fact that you're in the room discussing this topic, being engaged in this topic, going back to your communities and making sure this is a real issue that needs to be dealt with, I think is the most important thing that we can take away from, at least as far as I'm concerned, from this panel.
Just two quick things. One is in addition to the examples we talked about, there are many very tangible things that we can do. So very directly in the enrollment space, for example, something I didn't mention, we are working on an enrollment marketing campaign that we very much want to partner with communities to build, and also thinking very deeply about Jewish journeys. How do we help more Jewish families who may enroll their kids in Jewish early childhood make the journey, if it's right for their kid, into day schools? That is a big area where I think we have opportunities and potential partners. And then the last thing, you just met Gail Norrie, but Gail co-wrote with Lisa Cole, who's also sitting here, an article in the summer about the next $1 billion gift. And the point was, the day before Ruth Gottesman made her $1 billion gift to the Einstein School of Medicine, we all would have said that was impossible. And the point is not $1 billion. The point is, how can we think about things that are seemingly impossible, overcome our fear that comes with that, and actually make them happen?
Great, thank you. Thank you to all of our esteemed panelists. Thank you to all of you. Thank you for the insight. And I think, I don't know about all of you. I'm very excited, and I'm the grateful president of the Federation in Cleveland, but I'm a grateful parent and recipient of the Cleveland Jewish community, because everywhere I turn, there are these incredible students and faculty and heads of school that do so much to enrich our community. And so my hope is that we all continue to learn from each other, and that we really see this as a point of strength that we can just build on from here. Thank you all, and you'll see the security line.
Thank you so much.
Very good.